Made in China, made in China, made in China, made in Vietnam, made in China, made in China, made in Mexico. If it feels like almost nothing is made in the US anymore, that's because it isn't. Even when we buy things like beef, we're usually spending our money with a company that's based outside of the United States, like JBS based in Brazil. This brings us to a deeper issue than just where something is made. It's where our dollars are going. Why we should funnel all of our money out of our local communities to massive global corporations to make a few people rich, instead of allowing that money to circulate around and build community. Hi, I'm Trinity Vandenaker, Montana cowboy and entrepreneur. Welcome to Life in the West. The key to bringing back local, American-made products and services is business owners willing to make the decision to build wealth in a community instead of just making another dollar. In this video, I talked to Mike Calicrate down in Colorado Springs, Colorado, who's doing just that. I'm with Mike Calicrate, and where are we at? We're Ranch Foods Direct.
We're at Ranch Foods Direct in Colorado Springs.
And that's the name of your operation.
That's right. And you're standing in what we call the Peak to Plains Food Hub. And this is the old Federal Food Service location.
So what is a Federal Food Service?
Well, Federal Food Service, it was a regional kind of food service company.
Okay.
Based in Denver. Dealt a lot, mostly in produce. They operated for a while, and then Cisco started putting pressure on, and by 2017, Cisco had put them out of business. And so
put them out of business.
Yeah, they put Federal Food Service out of business, and so here we are, like they've done almost everyone else.
Okay, but one question I have: what does Cisco do? So where would you find Cisco food? If you're a consumer.
Well, if you're a consumer, you're going to find Cisco at restaurants, primarily. They're restaurants.
Like almost all restaurants.
They are the biggest food service company in America. They are a monopoly in food service. I mean, think about this. What would a reasonable return on your equity be if you made some investment somewhere?
I don't know, somewhere between 2% and 8% or something like that.
Well, compare
10%.
that to a bank interest, on a CD, 3 or 4% at the most, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But Cisco, right now, if you look them up on Google, right now, ask Google what Cisco's return on equity is. It's over 100%. Now that is not a competitive industry or a competitive marketplace that allows anybody to make those kind of returns.
Over 100%. So that means
they get their money back every year.
That's insane.
They get all their money back every year. But what it's doing is it's costing other small businesses in the industry. It's costing producers that they externalize costs on, buy below their cost of production. It's costing workers throughout the food system that are having to work for less and less because Cisco has so much power to extract wealth from the entire system. And so this is a company that we've got to look at breaking up. You've got to reduce their market power. They're destroying our food system. Well, they put this company out of business, Federal Food Service. And so thankfully, and we were at the same time looking for a new home because we'd lost our original home and we're going to have to move shortly. And this came up and it was a godsend. I mean, we got the building. Well, it's 22,000 square feet and it's already set up. It's got cooler, freezer, cooler, a room that we've developed into a kitchen. It's got a lot of dry storage, and we basically turned it into a food hub. And so if you're the raw milk guy that has the cows out at Callahan, you could bring your milk here to have your customers pick it up. If you're a Hava farm out at Peyton, Colorado, with the best produce you've ever seen in your life, year-round production, those guys come here every Friday at 11 o'clock, and 200 or 300 of their customers come into this place and pick up their CSA, their Community Support Ag drop-off, which is a combination of all the produce that a Hava might have for that week. So we really think of ourselves as a food hub, as a place where local food can happen, where we can help incubate. I mean, we've incubated several businesses over the years, but as well as in this location, to start to be able to better feed ourselves.
So it's not just stuff you're bringing in and going out with. It's also anybody in the community that, like anything locally grown, comes here to go out.
Exactly. Gotcha. We're just trying to facilitate. We're trying to lower costs and make it more efficient for people who produce to connect to people who eat. For example, we cut probably for over 50 producers of livestock. that just need custom processing. And so,
Right.
so they'll bring their livestock to St. Francis, Kansas, whether it's pigs, lambs, or cattle, and we'll slaughter them, and they're in the system then. Then they're on the truck. The truck brings those carcasses in every week. We cut them up. We make it retail ready any way you want it. We'll cut it however you want, and then their customers can pick up either here, or we can take it back to St. Francis if we need to on our backhaul. And so this is how we've really tried to grow that local regional food system to be able to feed the community. And so we really care about community. And people say, well, we need a Ranch Foods Direct in Dallas. We need one in Miami. We need one and I say, great, do it.
Right.
Come and see us. You can copy us. You can do what we've done, and I'll even help you, but you have to do it.
Right.
We don't need chains. We don't need franchises. We don't need big corporate entities that just go around extracting the money and the wealth and leaving behind dollar stores and Walmarts. You want to talk about the marketplace and market power, right?
Right.
This was a room originally in the Federal Food Service building that was put together for Chipotle. Chipotle wanted their vegetables and sliced and diced, and Federal Food Service was a produce company, and so they basically built this room to produce for the Chipotles in the region.
Really?
And they got right down to the end. The construction was finished, and all they needed was a contract to be able to buy the equipment they needed to do the processing for Chipotle. And Chipotle says, well, we don't do contracts. And so basically it became just a storage space.
So that you mean Chipotle is big enough to where they just can say, I'll just use it, but we'll tell you how. We just want to be able to move out tomorrow.
Yeah, well, it's some of that corporate sort of mentality that we're better than you and we're more powerful than you, and if we want to mistreat you, that's what we'll do.
Right, we're not going to sign a contract to tell you exactly when we're, like everybody else has to do.
Right, exactly. And so why would Federal Food Service, having just put up a brand new facility, probably a little stretched, why would they go out and buy another $1 million worth of equipment just in hopes that Chipotle would do business with them? And I'll give you an example of how that might turn out. So it's been several years ago, we had 23 Chipotles at Ranch Foods Direct. We were selling meat to 23 Chipotles, delivering them every single location, twice a week. We were very happy about the business. It was the slice steak business. And so we got the equipment, about $185,000 worth of equipment to be able to do that particular cut for Chipotle. And we were rocking along. And then they got a hold of us and they said, hey, we're looking at using you in the entire region from basically Fort Collins to Pueblo. Can you handle it? And I said, darn right, absolutely. I'd love to have the business. And so they said, great, let's work on it this week and we'll get back on, later in the week. And so we were pretty excited that we were going to get even more Chipotles because, their food with integrity fit perfectly with who we are in the community. And so Friday evening at 5 o'clock, my phone rang and it was Chipotle. And they said, we've decided not to do business with you at all anymore. And so they left.
Instead of upping it, they just went down to nothing.
They went to zero.
Yeah.
I mean, like
overnight.
that.
And with no contract.
With no contract. I had no contract. And so basically it's a single purpose machine that's been sitting in the dry storage here now for years. And they left me with $250,000 worth of inventory that I had to figure out what to do with. Now, that's why Federal Food Service wanted a contract.
Oh, yeah.
And that is how corporations treat small business. You are so unevenly matched in size and power that if you don't have a contract, and even if you do, it's very likely they're going to not abide by it anyway. And so basically, we will not sell to a chain. We will not sell to a franchise. We will not sell to a big box store. We will only sell to independent businesses like us, because we need to build that part of our economy. They are the ones that have been put out of business by abusive power of these big corporations. And so the big corporation basically just has the power to extract. They can, and they've got this whole level of executive paid people in the boardroom that are setting up their you know, overlording all of us, making those decisions that basically we have no power to confront, we have no power to oppose. They just simply pick our pockets and leave us bankrupt.
So when a oversized corporation, meaning they're so large that they can do these kind of things, they say, well, we're not manipulating the price on whatever it is that they're doing, beef or chicken or the produce or whatever. But is this, I mean, how do they use what you just talked about
they
to
are
manipulate
manipulating the price. In fact, look at all the fines they've paid. Look at all the settlements they've done since COVID. You know, price fixing on chicken, on pork, on beef, underpaying producers, you know, exploiting workers. I mean, the curtains got fully pulled back during COVID when the stress hit the system. And the problem with their system, their industrial factory style system, they claim it has efficiency. I don't know about that, but I do know it has a lot of weaknesses, and it most certainly isn't resilient. Put under any kind of pressure at all, it falls apart.
So one of the reasons for that, right, is because you have in efficient, so-called efficient systems, they narrow down the supply chains by exponentially, right? So if you take out one place or you just block that supply chain in one spot, you can't get it to the end.
Yeah, it's very vulnerable to collapse.
Right.
Extremely vulnerable. Where you take a lot of small businesses like this one, or Greg Gunthorpe in Indiana, for example. He's like us. He slaughters on site, raises his own pigs. I mean, the family just works harder.
I just had to break in here for a second. If you're enjoying the content that you're watching right now, make sure you go to lifeinthewest.com and click on the link to join my community to get behind the scenes exclusive content from me and to learn how you can help more of your dollars go back to local communities. It's going to be free until August 15th of 2024, so don't wait. Calicrate has a fantastic business in Ranch Foods Direct, but that's not where he started. He started with the Calicrate Bander. In ranching, you don't want to keep everything a bull. All the animals you sell for beef, you want to castrate. A bander is a device that places a rubber band around the testicles to cut off the blood supply until they drop off, making the animal a steer.
This bander was developed by myself and this guy, Gordon Ross.
Okay.
And this was 25 years, so this was in 2000 and what is it, 16?
16 or 18.
Yeah, so we've been at it a long time. But,
yeah.
But when we developed the Calicrate bander, Gordon Ross had a machine shop in St. Francis and helped design it and had made major contributions. I mean, Gordon and I would have breakfast together almost every morning at the little cafe in St. Francis, and his wife saved the placemats and the napkins that we did our engineer designing on. Huh? and still has them. But Gordon is an amazing guy, and we've been buddies for a long time. And it was all around the Calicrate bander. Well, this business employs around 40 to 50 people in St. Francis, Kansas.
Oh, okay.
The product ships to 34 countries.
Wow.
But the biggest use of the Calicrate bander is just on cattle that so-called or mismanaged cattle, like out of the South and Southeast. They come into these feedlots as bulls, and then it's just a no-brainer. You use the Calicrate bander on it. Actually, what Temple Grandin said one time is the most stressful thing you can do to an animal is that green elastrator ring that they use to put around above their testicles. It doesn't get tight enough. And so basically we've been thinking about, ever since I had that conversation with Temple years ago, we were thinking about, well, how could we make that green ring tight? And now you're able to do these small calves. If you want a band when they're little, you can do it and nearly eliminate the stress and the pain, because we call it compression analgesic. If you get it tight enough, it shuts off the blood supply. But better, even more so, important is you impact the nerve and shut off the pain. And that's what we're able to do with the Calicrate bander, the big one and the little one. And so once we perfected that holding mechanism that will only let it go through but won't go back. There's a gate here that'll let it come through but it won't let it go back. And you can just feel how tight those are.
Oh yeah.
And so once we perfected that in the wee bander, then it was a no-brainer. So this is sort of the next generation. And this one, you just put it in, put it on and around the top of the testicles, crank it up, to the correct tension, which is indicated here. So when this gets back to this line, that's the correct tension. Every single time, you'll never make a mistake. And so this is what finances a Ranch Foods Direct.
Gotcha.
And so it's really important to me that I tell people when they look at what we've done here with Ranch Foods Direct, I mean, you go in our retail stores, they see all the customers, they think, oh, this is awesome. How many ranchers do you know that could actually get it done and still get the ranching done?
Right.
Nobody.
Nobody can do that because it's a full-time.
And I tell people, this is how you lose all of grandma's money and your future inheritance. This is how you get divorced. This is how you lose it all, because you're now in the meat business when you're really a rancher. So I want to see us develop a marketplace where ranchers can actually ranch, farmers can actually farm, do what they're really good at and what they're happy doing, and we need a market, a real market that pays them a fair share of what consumers spend for food.
So businessmen doing this part so that ranchers can do what they do best, is what you're saying?
But in a competitive environment to where the rancher doesn't get screwed.
Right.
And right now, when we look back, since the 80s, we've lost half our ranchers.
Yeah.
How's that going to work?
Half.
And when you look at the number of cows that can, if we lost 10 million cows, think about how many dollars in wealth that is that started out as just grass growing in a pasture that now is not being consumed. And when we look at the Texas Panhandle burning, they had a good wet year last year, grew a lot of forage, but they didn't have the cows
to eat it off.
So now we have a fire problem. We have fuel for fire instead of fuel for a cow to produce a calf. That represented wealth, that paid the bills, that paid for the swimming pool to open this summer in the small town of Pampa, Texas, or to seal the airport runway or whatever it may be. These towns are dying as we remove the cows, as we remove the ranchers, and then the fire does its final thing to burn them up. This is crazy.
Yeah,
and it's all connected to meat packer power of stealing livestock from people who do the actual wealth creation and do all the work and take the risk. They steal from those people and then hand the profits off to the Walton family, to the Costco's, to the King Soopers and Albertsons. I mean, here you've got these big companies making, 30, 40% return on equity. Cisco over 100% return on equity, and ranchers are eating their equity. They are losing their equity. They're losing their ranches. They're losing their farms. They're forced to do things that are just so contrary to good stewardship. I mean, you've got one guy on a big no-till tractor and a big spray rig farming 10,000 acres. One guy?
Yeah.
No way. The only reason he can do that is because of Roundup, which is poison in all of us, as well as our soils and waterways. And this guy is he can't be having any fun. I mean, there's a point at which you need your neighbor more than you need their land.
Right. Real community is totally different than just having a few buildings. It's people.
Well, we went from getting 70% of the consumer beef dollar back in 1970 when I started to getting during COVID 27%. Well, that massive gap ended up in the pockets of the big corporations, and they've got the power to extract whatever wealth they want. But when you see the CEO of a corporation making 1,000 times more than the typical worker, now come on,
right?
That isn't right. I mean, let's rebuild this system in a way that's fair and equitable, and people can actually do the work that they get paid. I mean, how do you expect anybody in production agriculture to make it on 14 cents out of the consumer food dollar?
No. And so we're saying 14 cents. You were saying 24%, but the actual number now is.
Well, that's just in the beef sector.
Just in the beef sector, but the number of ag dollars is almost, I think it's down to 12 cents.
Well, it's under 4. The last chart I've got is 14.3 cents.
Gotcha.
Farmers Union puts that out every year. But that's all the food. I mean, that's the bread, the salad, the beef, the chicken and the pork, all of it, right?
Yeah.
There's no way. And so the way that we make up the difference is we subsidize them. And so as you see this mountain of debt growing bigger and bigger and bigger, what does that really represent?
Right.
Well, we're throwing a lot of money out there to agricultural producers in order to keep them in business instead of addressing the real problem, and that's the corporations picking their pockets.
Right. So you're subsidizing the farmers who are all their income is being sucked up into the big corporations in the middle.
Right. Right. And we're not even holding the corporations accountable.
No.
We just, every year, we just give more money to the farmer, who in turn then transfers it to the corporation.
Right.
So why didn't you just write a check to the corporation?
Right.
Wouldn't that be more efficient?
It would.
If you want to talk about efficiency,
Mm-hmm.
well, then it wouldn't be happy at all to the taxpayer that watches that happen, and then the gig would be up and everybody would know it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, by funneling it through farmers and acting like we've got markets when we don't, they get away with it. But this goes back to who's really running our government.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the lobbyists are running our government. It's the big money in the DuPonts, in the Bayers, and Monsantos. It's the Tysons. It's the how could it be worse than the Batista brothers of JBS, a Brazilian company? Criminals, outright criminals. They were in prison. I mean, bribed the last 3 presidents of Brazil. They bribed nearly 2,000 government officials and inspectors to send rotten meat in the United States. How is it they still have a corporate charter in this country?
Yeah, I don't know. Money.
Totally.
Power.
It's about lobby and power, and no rules around campaign financing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we'll talk about that later, because the campaign financing, people say, well, there's limits on that. There is, but then the money to the campaigns doesn't even pass through the campaigns.
Right.
It goes right to commercials, and
right.
By the time somebody gets elected, they have so many debts they have to pay to corporations that paid for them to get elected.
They're totally beholden.
They're totally beholden.
Right.
Yeah.
We're headed to Kansas.
Is the St. Francis
That's
Canyon.
right. Yeah, it's 200 miles from here. Northeast, straight across the high plains of eastern Colorado.
And is that where you started out, was Kansas?
Yeah, I started out in St. Francis, Kansas. I moved there in about 1972. Built my first feedlot there in 1978. Second one in about 1986. And I've been there ever since.
Okay.
This is the milk for the grandkids.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Raw milk?
Yeah.
Is it raw milk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go through a jug a week, one of those jars a week, and the grandkids get 4. Got your water whenever you need it. Clear. We made her.
Made it, which is always a good thing.
Yeah. And you got to give the Mexicans a lot of credit. They're rejecting the GMO model and the whole industrial model in favor of healthy tortillas.
GMO meaning genetically modified
Organisms.
So this
Right.
is what we're going to in this country big time.
Oh, it's all the corn and soybean country, and the country is essentially the GMO varieties of grain that allow you to spray these chemicals on it, and it doesn't affect the plant. It only kills the weeds growing around the plants, which now many of these weeds are becoming resistant to this
They are. Yes.
family of chemicals. And so what are we going to do then?
I have no idea.
You know, I'm saying, bottom line, any marginal land goes back to grass, it gets livestock put on it. You create the livestock markets to support that industry, and the good land that gets the sufficient rainfall, grow corn, whatever you need for the industries that need corn and soybeans, which is mostly livestock industries. That's where the grains ought to be grown, is where you have sufficient rainfall. But we need to go back to the traditional practices. And a lot of those places need to be also be livestock centered, so that whatever's produced on that land is put through the livestock for maximum value and return. And of course, returning back to a meat-centered diet would be much healthier for America. And get rid of all of these fake foods, which are the corn and the soybean-based, highly and hyper-processed foods that are seriously making us sick and giving us degenerative diseases.
There's a movement of, and has been for a long time, to go to all crops, because I think a lot of it has to do with people struggling with the morality of killing things, so therefore they feel that we should grow crops everywhere, and in so doing, the land we flew over right there is being destroyed. You can see it. It's not like it takes a scientist to see that.
Right.
It's being destroyed because it's not good enough land, or doesn't have the right chemical makeup even to be cropland.
Right. Yeah, it's been years since the whole vegetarian sort of vegan movement came about, and you ask people, well, why are you a vegetarian? Well, I don't like the way animals are treated. Well,
Right.
I don't either. I don't like the way animals are treated in
Right.
hog factories and chicken factories and in 130,000 head feedlots. So let's build a better system where the animal is respected and treated humanely and provides us with healthy, nutrient-dense food. Let's shift it. But the problem is the big companies have so much power politically that we're unable to adopt policy that would head us in that direction. That
Right.
has to change.
They have so much influence as far as lobbying goes, right?
Exactly. And this is why it's so important, critically important, to connect with consumers, because they vote.
And they don't really understand. Actually, in my opinion, see if you agree with this, the vegan and vegetarian movement has actually increased the speed with which we have condensed all of our beef into one or four or five companies, because you're taking beef off the land, so we import more of it.
Right.
You know, as
Right.
long as it's out of sight, it's okay, right?
Right.
As long as it's done somewhere else.
Well, in fact, you look at a lot of these organizations today, they're like the Humane Society. They don't realize it, but they are pushing industrial agriculture because they're not supporting the people who actually raise animals right.
Right.
So they're sort of blindly saying, I'm going to be a vegetarian, so I'm not going to support any meat production, and in which case that then really favors the big corporations whose animals are all out of sight, out of mind, not being well treated in the environments that they're in. And so they're not accomplishing their end goal, if their end goal is for animals to be treated more humanely. For animals to be treated more humanely, you need husbandmen taking care of them,
Right.
not corporate CEOs in a distant place like New York City.
Or Brazil.
Yeah, we're exactly right. Another country.
Or China or Japan or somewhere else.
Right.
So what is this here? This is your headquarters?
Yeah,
or?
this is our main offices.
This is your main
Yeah.
offices. Okay. And what do you guys do here?
Well, this is the home of Noble Enterprises. So Noble Enterprises manufactures and markets the Calicrate banner.
Okay.
Castration device.
So this is where you kind of operate that
Correct.
business.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is a little mini version of the retail store we have in Colorado Springs.
I see.
So that the folks who live here locally can have access to good food. So this is just a small sampling of what we do up there. So we've got our broth, we've got our tallow, we've got a variety of different steaks. And all of this stuff here is frozen.
Bone broth.
Right. And so you can see the quality. I mean, you don't get this in grocery stores anywhere.
No. Why don't you?
Well, because it comes from the big packers, and in our production model, we don't use performance-enhancing drugs, and so you're going to have better marbling, better flavor, and more tenderness.
Okay.
Because we don't use the performance-enhancing drugs that add about 150 or more pounds to a finished animal in a big feedlot. The other thing is our beef is Angus cows and Wagyu bulls. So it's a cross that favors a lot more marbling in the meat. Also with Wagyu, you get a little better omega-3 to 6 ratio, a favorable ratio of omega-6 fatty acids. if you're interested in that.
Omega-6 fatty acids.
That's, it's higher in omega-3s, which is a good thing. Let's have access to the...
And you have 80, 20, 90, 10?
And 85-15.
And 85-15.
And that's the percentage of fat. So it's 85% lean, 15% fat.
Right. But this is actual ground beef. Like this is beef that's actually ground up. So you're saying now they've changed the pink slime to, first it was finely textured
It's still
beef.
It's fine. It's lean, finely textured beef.
Well, didn't they just the USDA just changed the wording of that to ground beef now?
Oh yeah. They don't. Well, it's still called pink slime or lean, finely textured beef, but USDA doesn't require it to be on the label.
I see.
And I would argue, well, it should be on the label. It's got anhydrous ammonia in it. And what does that do for the the microflora in your gut? Let's assume your gut, just for a minute, is really runs the show. The immune system, it's connected to the brain. It's really responsible for a lot of things. And if that microflora dies or is mistreated in any way, it impacts your health directly. This is absolutely the truth. I mean, we may not recognize it or acknowledge it, but this is the truth. And so for us to eat something that would wipe out our microflora, what does pink slime, or what does anhydrous ammonia do in pink slime? The reason they wash the trimmings in anhydrous ammonia is to kill the bacteria, like the E. coli, salmonella, whatever may make us sick if we eat it. Well, what does anhydrous ammonia do if you put it on the soil as a nitrogen fertilizer? Well, it kills the microflora in the soil, it kills the bacteria, and reduces your soil health. It'll turn living soil into dead dirt. In fact, it was used, in wars across the world to make landing strips, because it would just basically turn the soil into something very similar to concrete. And this is the cheapest nitrogen source of fertilizer that farmers are using all over the country. And now it's going into our ground beef.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
That is crazy.
But what really inspired this was the development of the Calicrate Pro Bander. The new model.
Which has been out for
the next generation. It's been out probably for 6 or 8 years.
Okay.
Well, the problem with Ross Manufacturing, who does this bander, the original Calicrate bander, their facilities are downtown. They've got a really nice manufacturing facility, and they were also staging all of our shipments for us, because all we had was a small office out at the feedlot.
Right.
Well, when we brought on this bander, now we need a lot more room. And so when this bander hit the market, we were building this.
Okay.
And you'll see why here.
I will.
You'll see why.
Okay.
Yeah. Tabitha.
Hello.
Meet Trinity.
How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
I make people uncomfortable. That's my job.
Oh, that's
Yeah. He records you.
How you doing? Oh, wow.
And so this
That's
is where
beautiful.
the actual manufacturing of this product is done over at Wheeler, which is 5 miles east, at my son Tegan's place.
Okay.
And then the parts are all brought into here, where Jose and his wife do the assembly.
Okay.
So they put it all together. There's like 59 pieces in a Calicrate Pro
they
Bander.
assemble them here.
When we first started, we had a distributor out of Australia. His name was John, and a really good businessman, and was doing a great job in Australia of distributing the Calicrate Bander. And he came to me one day and he says, "Hey, Mike," he said, "I got an idea that we can make a lot more money with the Calicrate Bander." And he held that bander up and he says, "What we should do is have this made in Pakistan. We could do it a lot cheaper, and then you and I could make more." And I said, "John, I really appreciate you thinking about us and being conscious of how to save some money, but that's one thing that will never happen. The people in St. Francis need income. The Calicrate Bander is critical to our community to keep it going and to keep it alive, and that will not ever happen. We will always manufacture the Calicrate Bander in St. Francis, Kansas, as long as I'm alive." And he got it. He totally got it. And he says,
understood it, but...
"Mike, I get it." And he almost was teared up. I mean, he said, "Yeah, you're right. Why would I even suggest such a stupid thing?" Well, the reason is because he didn't know anyone in St. Francis that made the bander, who needed the income, who had kids in school, and our manufacturing, a lot of it is done in home, like the loops. We sell a loop that goes with the bander. I'll show you.
Yeah.
So basically, for every animal you castrate with the original calico bander, you need this loop. Well, this is manufactured in the home. A lot of moms that stay-at-home moms that just need a little extra income. A lot of retired people make these, but we'll produce over 9,000 of these a day.
Wow.
And that's a lot. That's why you don't see a lot of people here right now. I think Jose may be on break, but this is made outside of this facility. And the same way with this next generation calicrate bander, the Pro bander, a lot of this is assembled in the home. And so it's critical to our community. I had a neighbor years ago that was an elderly woman. Her name was Elsie. And I lived next to her for like 20 years. And I never knew she was a calicrate bander manufacturer.
Oh, really? Huh.
Sweetest lady ever. But it changes their lives if they can get that additional income.
So you bring up such a good point, though. There's a temptation when you're doing business to increase profit by moving the production of something out of the U.S. because it's cheaper, right? It's less.
Right.
So, which brings up the point that it's not really. There's definitely not a level playing field there, but the temptation to do that is one of the reasons that people may not understand that the money that goes into a corporation, let's say, a corporation that owns a company out in the middle of nowhere next to a small town, the money is not actually being implemented or stays with that community, right? That's why you see the communities dying, is because the money leaves that community. How does that happen?
Well, that's that whole extraction model. Let's mine the Ogallala Aquifer, turn it into grain that we can steal and pay below cost of production, and pretty soon the water's gone and the mine is dried up and, it's over with. But corporations are really good at that because they sit around in offices trying to figure out how to maximize return on investment, return on equity, executive pay, shareholder returns, and all of that. And so it's just business. And how many times have we heard that before when a community was being destroyed with a Walmart? It's just business. No, it's not. It's people's lives. It's a farmer should be willing to farm just to farm, but he shouldn't have to beg for food.
This is what the corporations are. This is what the model we're going to is the farmers are supposed to farm with no profit and be happy.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah, open up a bed and breakfast, so the corporate executive can come stay the weekend and you can wash his toilet when he leaves. Yeah, this is the attitude they have, is that people who produce things are a cost to be reduced, and we can outsource that, we can send it to China, whatever. But during COVID, we found out that those supply chains are not resilient, they break very easily, shelves go empty, and oh heck, we might want to reconsider this thing. We may want to bring more manufacturing back to the United States. But still, if we don't have a fair marketplace and we don't give the wealth creator, the maker, the grower, the people who actually do things with their hands, if we don't give them a fairer income, it's still extraction. It's just that it's domestically, it's extracted domestically. But the big con is you go to Walmart to save money. But everything you're buying in Walmart comes with human suffering, animal suffering, environmental degradation, economic collapse of communities, and a ton of government money that has to go for the repair of that. You're not getting a good deal at Walmart by any means. And now we've got the richest family in the world, the Walton family, that has got this river of profits that are running into their pockets every day from the Walmart model. And of course, then you end up at the dollar stores that are, utilizing the waste off of that system. Whether it's a company that went broke selling to Walmart, those inventories end up in dollar stores. And we've got this whole Walmart dollar store model. I talk about how Walmart kills and consumes the prey, Main Street basically, small business. And dollar stores come in and eat the decaying remains. And then there's nothing left. Now what are we going to do when that is done, when that's complete? What are we going to do?
I don't know, because the community is not going to be there.
You're done.
So now, but in a small town, we oh yeah, we're getting a dollar store. Well, it's helping our community because we can have more, 3 more jobs, right?
Right, 1 more job.
1 more job.
In fact, if the staff person at the dollar store has to go to the bathroom, they have to lock the door so the customers can't leave, so they can go to the bathroom and then come back and open the door. What if there's a fire? I mean, this is really so wrong. You can't even believe it. But one of the biggest insults in St. Francis, Kansas, is we got a dollar store. We got a Walmart 35 miles away in Goodland, a super Walmart. This is interesting. That super Walmart, when it opened 20 years ago or whenever that was, the butcher, the guy that opened up the meat department in that Walmart, had opened up a bunch of them around the country. He was their guy that opened the meat departments up in the super Walmarts. Well, he came to work for Ranch Foods Direct. He was from Colorado Springs. His name was Brandon. And Brandon came to work for us cutting carcasses and cutting meat. An amazing young man and a hell of a cutter. And he said, you know, Mike, I opened the Walmart in Goodland. And he said, the day that we closed the last independent grocery store in Goodland, we raised our meat prices 18%. And I thought, yeah, who's the fool in this game? The Walmart shopper.
So you have in that particular scenario, you have enough power to cut the price until there's no competition, and then you can just...
And that's predatory. I mean, Robinson-Patman, Sherman Act, Clayton Act, where the heck's the enforcement? Look back 100 years at the robber baron era. That should have been, if you study any history at all, you know that won't work. And it certainly hasn't worked now, and in fact, it's way more concentrated. The power in the hands of a few is worse today than it ever was in 1900. And you know, Abraham Lincoln was president during that Civil War time, and one of the things that he said he feared most was corporate power. As a result of the war, corporations have been enthroned, and he said what he feared most was that concentrated power, and it came to be true.
You're talking about the chemicals coming in from a large corporation, and the grain going out, grain, beef, everything is now controlled by these massive conglomerates that most of them aren't even owned in the United States anymore.
Right.
It seems to me that they don't want to actually, you just look at the chicken industry. They don't want to actually own the land and be the producer itself, because they're just extracting all of the money and wealth from the producer on both ends.
Right.
Is that?
Well, Apple doesn't want to make their own phones.
Right.
They're going to externalize that cost off to China or wherever they can get the cheapest possible labor. Nike doesn't make their shoes, but they position themselves from a marketing perspective to make all the money and to reduce every other cost in the supply chain that they possibly can. That's the model of JBS, Tyson, Cargill, Marfrig. And JBS and Marfrig are both Brazilian companies. And then you've got Smithfield in the pork side, that they control 25% of our pork supply in the United States. That's Chinese owned. So they're all about externalizing the cost, and they're going to position themselves in a place of essentially no risk. But in a place
they're going to try to limit the risk on themselves. That's why they don't want to own the land and they want you to take the risk, or as the producer.
That's right.
They want the producer to take all the risk.
Well, and they want you to mine your land. They want you to don't build any new fences.
Right.
Just scrape it. Just take every bit of wealth there is out of it. Just like with the Ogallala Aquifer, we're draining it. We are being so irresponsible with this precious water resource. We're essentially pumping it out and giving the wealth to the big corporations who buy the production from that land. And we've simply got to drive them away. We've got to shut them down. We've got to get rid of them. But to do that, you've got to build a brand new infrastructure from farm to plate.
Yeah.
But really, we're about feeding our community, connecting it in a way that's positive for everyone. The farmer has got to get paid a living income, or he won't be farming, and we won't have food to eat. That's the bottom line. We've outsourced, 20% of the beef we consume in this country is imported, but not just imported from criminals like the Batista brothers who own JBS. I mean, these are people who search the world for the hungriest people that'll work the cheapest, or the places with the most resources, and they go there to mine and extract and exploit, and the money goes in their bank account, and we get the poor quality whatever that they've produced or they've bought from people who have struggled to produce. And we talk about imports, and people say, well, you should be able to compete. Well, the people in Brazil that are producing those below cost of production exports into the United States are going broke too. So we're all being played for the fool in this. And we've got to build these new food systems that like Ranch Foods Direct, that cares about all the things.
One of the things that where I was talking about with somebody up in Billings was giving the consumer the right to choose what they buy. I honestly believe, maybe not in the past. I mean, in the past it was, I don't know, maybe it was in the past, where your pocketbook rules what we do. So we buy the cheapest thing possible, right?
Right.
But for some reason, they haven't allowed labels to be put on things that actually tell you what's in it, like whether there's pink slime in your burger or whether it's actually U.S., comes from the U.S. So why don't they trust that? Why don't, and I say they, the big corporations, the lobbyists, the people who are trying to keep you from putting a label on meat that tells you where it is, why wouldn't they trust that?
Well, they don't want it because it exposes where their product is actually coming from. And then if you connect the dots, you find out they're doing it for all financial reasons. They can go to Brazil, they can buy it cheaper, bring it into it's arbitrage. They're buying it cheap somewhere else and selling it into the highest consuming market. And if they put a label on it, then the consumer can decide whether they want to buy Brazilian beef or U.S. produced beef. And the consumer's typically going to want to buy U.S. production if it's not too much more expensive, right? So you really haven't.
If it's competitive, but
you may not have solved the problem because there is a huge price difference in what they're bringing in. It's produced under different conditions. It's stolen to begin with, so it's not a lot different than the drug trade, except it's probably more lucrative and not illegal.
And legal, mostly legal, depending on how you do it.
Right. But one of the things about Walmart and Sam Walton in particular is he taught Americans to be price shoppers.
Right.
And this is the kiss of death. Because if all you look at is price, you're going to get a bad deal in the end. Everyone's going to get a bad deal. If they can deceive you into thinking it's something different and sell it at a lower price and make you a loyal customer on price alone, then you've just become this zombie shopper that doesn't care about anything else. And by doing that, you won't live in a world that works. Because with that product that you just got, it comes to you below its true cost of production. It exploited farm families, workers,
land,
environmental damage. It exploited the water supplies. And we think about the Ogallala Aquifer as they drain it. It's not just that they're draining it and farms now don't have access to drinking water for livestock or houses or whatever. And there's been a big loss of irrigation as a result of the declining aquifer, but the water quality declines. It becomes harder. It potentially becomes contaminated. All of those things are happening right now with no one paying attention that can actually make a difference.
And this blows me away because you're talking about something like when we focus on one thing, we often forget all the rest around it. And that's what's happening right now, I believe, in the world for our food is we're focusing on what's called efficiency. It's like in the name of efficiency, we need 4 companies to run our entire food supply, or one. They're pushing, like the WEF is even pushing it even further. Like they want to control the entire food supply all the way down.
Right.
In the name of efficiency, we're doing this stuff that's causing.
Totally overlook the cow's contribution to climate.
Totally.
The positive contribution that a cow has on climate.
So what are those? I mean, because we're told they're all negative.
When a cow eats grass, they're part of that carbon cycle. They're part of the nutrient cycle. They're part of the water cycle. And so when the cow eats the grass and then defecates on the grass, they're cycling. There's a nutrient cycle there. And so the manure goes back into the land. Hopefully there's dung beetles that are taking it down into the soil. And so the cow, as a result of eating the grass, and it's something we can't utilize, but a cow can with their rumen and their digestive system, now the cow is growing a calf inside of her. And so now you got 2 cows when the calf is born. And that's it's wealth creation. Literally it's creation of wealth from the land. It's like Ben Franklin used to say. He said there's 3 ways to accumulate wealth. You can conquer it the way the Romans did. You can steal it the way corporations do. That's paraphrased. But what he was talking about was the East India Company at the time, which is the modern day Cargill.
Right.
Cargill would be the modern day East India Company.
Global multinational corporation.
But he said there's a better way. There's a better way to accumulate wealth, and that is through agriculture. Plant a seed in the ground, add water and sunshine, and as if in a continual miracle, wealth is created every year. And this is a cow. This is the gift of a cow. So a cow is out there eating everything we can't eat or utilize otherwise and turning that into beef.
So I was just talking to, we were just talking about what small businesses do in communities like this. You said you moved away from this community.
Yep.
Near here anyway.
Yes.
How big is Bird?
Less than 500 people.
Less than 500 people.
Yes.
So it's a really small community. And then you moved back here after college, right?
Yes, I did.
So would it be much more difficult if there wasn't a job here for you at somewhere like this? I mean, what would you be doing?
Honestly, I have no idea. Because it would be very difficult going from a place where there's not many jobs and then reaching out to somewhere where there's plenty no matter what you want to do, and then come back being like, well, I have to settle for something that I can get, not what I want sometimes. And this job has offered me something I've always wanted to do and has got me into that industry, which I'm grateful for.
Are you from the ranching industry, agriculture in some way, or?
I've never been in it. I've always grew up around it, and now I'm in it.
Okay.
So, yep.
And your job here is?
The shipping manager for the banders, loops, everything. I answer all your questions of what you need, what works best, if something goes wrong. Yep.
He's just full of these people from small towns. So what's your name and what you do here?
Yes, so I'm Jacqueline Ketzner. I do the books for the Cattle Creek Feed Yard, and I grew up here in St. Francis.
So you grew up here, and so a lot of people that grow up in small communities, they go away.
Yes.
Because there's opportunities else. Where'd you go away for, college?
Yes, so I went to Grand Junction. I went to Mason University, actually got a theater degree, when I was young and didn't know what I wanted to do in life, and then came back here, and I was raised by a rancher, and this is what I'm pursuing now, so.
So you were in the ranching industry growing up?
Correct.
Okay. And you wanted to come back to this community?
Not at the time.
Not at the time,
Not
of
at
course,
the time.
right?
You're young, you don't know much, and then you go out and you learn, and you're like, okay, this is a very important industry, so.
So what do you like about the small community? Why did you want to come back to a smaller community versus staying in somewhere like Grand Junction?
Originally, I have kids, and I love the small community. We all come together and support one another, and that was my main focus, was my children and taking care of them and supporting them, so.
Because of this company, you're able to do that right here in the town you grew up in.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes. Not only that, but also able to, with ranch foods and the meat, support my children and feed them healthy meat too, right here in our own store. So.
Through your own store.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest draws of small communities is children, is growing up. I mean, I raised my kids in a small town, and they go to a small school, and the whole town shows up for the football game, and that kind of thing. That's the kind of school people want to raise their children in. But without jobs,
right,
or good jobs, I mean, I don't know what other jobs there is, but there isn't a lot of opportunities to stay in a small town like this, right?
Right. I would agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Trinity?
You're doing the.
How you doing, man?
What are you doing?
Making copies.
Making copies. What like?
Oh yeah, it's repeat. Make a million of these.
You put them in. You're putting them in the machine, and then it's tracing that, or what?
Actually, no. It'd be cutting this to size.
Oh, okay.
If you can
That's
see.
what this machine is
That's
doing
what
right now?
that's doing, exactly.
That's incredible that you can just put it in there and it will do it.
That's the program.
It does the same thing every single time. So
Yeah.
The part we're making is this ratchet handle for the program.
Oh, okay. Is it aluminum?
Yes.
Okay. And that's these parts, and they're.
They start
This-
out as a solid block, and then in this position they get the profile done,
Okay.
So this is what they look like after this position. So they get flipped over into there. And then when they come out of this position.
How are they cut loose from this?
These are little clamps.
Oh, okay. So they're just clamped in place? Gotcha. I see. And then they're made into that.
Yep, that's the finished product, and then they'll get put through a bender that puts a little bend in them there.
Okay. So how do you get them to be black?
So it's called, the surface treatment's called anodizing.
Oh,
So we have a company in Denver that we take all these to, and it's an acid bath and then an electrolysis process, and then it builds up an aluminum oxide on the surface of the part.
Couldn't
It's
have warned the
porous,
guy.
so then you're able to dip it in dye, and it'll hold the black dye.
okay.
Or you can do any color you want, actually.
Is that similar to like gun bluing or not?
Yeah, it's gun bluing actually does the same thing, where it's building that oxide up on the surface. Our milling machine, CNC milling machine, and it's got tools that rotate. Everything in there is done with a tool that rotates. And this machine over here is our CNC lathe. And the primary difference is the workpiece turns on a lathe, so it's spinning as opposed to the tool spinning. So the part spins, and then a tool engages it from the side here, and that's what this big rotating thing is. It's called the turret.
Yeah. It's a lot nicer than having an open lathe where you can get wrapped around it on accident.
Yeah. So this is doing a whole bar of material. It's going to make 75 parts. It's on its 52nd right now, and this is the part.
It's making that?
Yeah. So it's just a little axle with a threaded hole in the middle of it. And what that is our on our ratchet handles, or the other side, that's the axle for the ratchet pawl. So you go in there, here's the ratchet paw.
Okay.
There'd be a spring on that. And then, so here's like the spool. This ratchet bolts on to that.
Okay.
So this ratchet would end up in here.
And you make all these parts here?
Yes, sir.
And then thread them and everything?
Yep. So this is probably one of the more complex pieces. It's got 3 threaded holes and a bore on each end. And then on the side here, it's got some features and 2 threaded holes. I see. And so this part pretty much comes out of this machine 100% done.
Okay, cool. How many of these do you make at a time? I mean,
so
banders.
We'll go through each part, and we'll make 1,000 of each part, and that'll allow us to make 1,000 banders in each batch. And that seems to be a
pretty good amount.
Pretty good rotation.
I see. And all these are just that one?
Yes. Yep.
Just that thing.
Yep. So right now we got about almost 900, and then we're gonna ship 1,000 of them.
Okay. Cool.
This is where we get our stock in. We'll pre-finish it. So we'll run this through our tumbler, and that gives it a nice smooth finish.
Polish it and
it just takes off all the sharp edges and any burrs that might get in the way of our fixturing. So
okay.
This is what it looks like when we get it in. We get everything pre-cut to length, but then we run this through the tumbler to get all that sharpness and roughness off of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a plastic media, the green stuff, and that's good for softer metals like aluminum.
Like aluminum. It doesn't take a lot from aluminum, I suppose.
No, it doesn't. About 20 minutes in that tank there, and that's what gives us the finish that we need.
Okay.
The guys that have got all the equipment, you want to keep it running. You know, it doesn't ever not come to work. It's always on time.
Yeah.
It doesn't watch too much football on a Sunday and not feel great on a Monday, and it's wealth creating enterprises in these small communities that we need to really encourage.
All you gotta do is feed it.
That's right.
You have to feed it.
That's right.
Feed it a bunch of aluminum and metal.
That's right. That's right. Think about this, Trinity.
Yeah.
This is Fillmore Street.
Yeah.
This is one of the busiest east-west streets in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
But look what we have over here.
Yep.
Chains. All chains.
Yeah.
There's a stoplight. How is it that Taco Bell comes to town and we give them a stoplight and an arrow. So you can get to Taco Bell. Either whether you're going east or west, it doesn't matter. You can go to Taco Bell safely with an arrow and a stoplight.
Right.
But what about Eric?
Right.
The local coffee roaster.
Yeah.
You can't get here
so we had to go around through
you
a
can't
little
get
alley.
here if you're going east.
Huh.
Unless you know the secret back
route.
entrance through an alleyway.
Huh.
And so Colorado Springs makes it very easy for the chains to come in and locate, and makes it very difficult for independent businesses to exist in this city. And I mean from signage even. So Eric has on the corner of his building, "We serve Calicrate beef."
Yeah.
They made him take that sign down. Meanwhile, look at the signage of all of these chains. Look at the McDonald's on the corner. Look at the Whataburger.
So why did they make him take it down?
It's their policy. It's how cities can form policy that disadvantages certain people and advantages others. And when the chains, like Eric Slosser talked about in his book Fast Food Nation, when the chains and the franchises and Wall Street runs your city, it's a far different look and feel than when places like Eric's coffee shop and a small store like Ranch Foods Director here.
Absolutely.
The community is much stronger, much better with many small businesses than it is with lots of chains and big box stores.
Well, thanks for coming along on this journey with me. I'm learning so much about these industries and how local community and local community products matter a lot more to an area and a region than all of this consumerism where we search for the best price. There's a lot more to wealth than just money. So thanks for coming along. Make sure you join my community over at lifeinthewest.com. Click on the link there and join. And you might want to watch this next video that YouTube suggests for you right here. Until next time, I'm Trinity Vandenaker. God bless.